mind over matter. I'm going to take you on a little bit of a journey, basically, of how I came to embrace mindfulness. This is something that I've had a love-hate relationship with for most of my life. I was fortunate enough to be introduced to mindfulness early on, thanks to my mom, and but it really wasn't as easy as I would have liked. So this was my starting point, mind over matter. As a young kid, I was, I guess my emotions were all over the place. My mom was very aware of this, and she wanted to help introduce me to different practices to kind of help and get that under control. And that's the part that I took as a child, get it under control, which you'll find out later is maybe not the ideal approach. So I was like, this is phenomenal. I understand, you know, the mind has like this amazing power over everything. And actually, I want to take you through a little exercise to illustrate this. Okay, so yes, don't look at it for too long if you don't want you to get too dizzy here. But this is what your mind might first interpret it as a moving image, maybe a GIF. But it is simply a still image, and it's an optical illusion, and your brain is, I'll move it on. Your brain thinks it's moving. I love these kind of simple exercises because they really do illustrate that your mind is trying to make sense of everything that's out there, and it's dictating your reality. And you do have some say in that. So our life is what our thoughts make of it. Ah, yes, control. Black screen. The part where I tried to control my mind led me down this pretty dark path, which is why I have this screen up in black here. Basically, I started trying to figure out how to make things happen. I got very frustrated with myself because I thought, well, I'm not actually that happy. I'm feeling unhappy about lots of things in my life. At the time, again, as a kid, you know, my school wasn't going great. I wasn't getting the scholarships that I wanted to get. I didn't feel like I was progressing in life. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my career. This was like a huge existential crisis for myself. And on top of this, I knew that I should be able to figure this out because mind over matter. What's wrong? I must be doing something wrong. So there we go. I ended up in a couple of therapists' offices, among other things. And then I also started exploring what was going on here. Why was I feeling so much suffering? And this led me through a whole bunch of different research and reading where I understood, and I love this formula, and this is kind of where I started to get into the science of what's going on in my mind. Suffering equals pain times resistance. A lot of people feel that this is actually a very liberating thing because the theory behind this is actually if you reduce any one of these two sides to zero, your suffering goes to zero, right? If anything times zero is zero. You cannot reduce pain. Pain is a reality of life. We feel it. It's physical, it's emotional, it's there. But you can reduce your resistance. The thing, though, for me, and I think for a lot of people, is that as, again, I was trying to control my resistance, I just ran into more of it. I was bringing up a whole bunch of fears that were just multiplying things, and I was using other resources to try to bring that back down into control, whether it was food, or whether it was going out, or whether it was burying myself in the career that I had decided was the right one for me at the time, because I needed the answer to that question that was really driving me nuts when I was 16. So this whole research and this part about fear really got me on down this path of looking at like what is the core of fear, and we heard about this a little bit today. Fear is just a very instinctual, like it's a primal response, and it's trying to protect you. It's just trying to let you know that, hey, maybe you're about to step into fire. Watch out, danger. So the amygdala is responsible for that. This image here, it reminds me of the fact that I was like, okay, this is great. Now I understand where fear is coming from. I understand how my brain is processing this. But I guess this is the way it is. Like, for whatever reason in my life, there's all these triggers that are coming at me, and I feel afraid, and I don't know what to do with it. So my neural networks must be all messed up, and they must be like this because, I don't know, I had some trauma when I was a child, and this is my blueprint, and I need to deal with it, and I need to make it work for me. Okay, new plan. Make it work. Tried that for a while, obviously didn't work. So I moved on to a new research project for myself, which was instead of trying to understand suffering and my unhappiness, I tried to understand how could I get to happy? What is the science of happiness? So I learned something actually quite interesting, another formula. Happiness is your set point plus the conditions that are around you, plus voluntary activities. So set point is things like your genes. This is really like your biological makeup. Some research says that this is responsible for actually up to 50% or more of your happiness. Conditions are other factors that seem like they're uncontrollable because they're in your environment. Maybe the city that you live in, maybe the relationship that you have with your parents, your family, people that you haven't chosen that are necessarily in your life, and then voluntary activities, of course, that you have control over. I actually found this to be quite liberating. I was like, okay, so I do have some ability here to influence my happiness. I also discovered at the same time the concept of neuroplasticity, which was fantastic because I went from believing that my life was dictated by a specific blueprint to my brain and my kind of mental patterns and my neural networks can all be changed. Everything that I've learned, my fear responses are learned. Whether I learned them or whether they've been passed on to me by generations, it doesn't matter. They were learned, and they can be changed. New life. I was very excited. Light at the end of the tunnel. So I looked a little bit further into, okay, so how do you go about and bring this change on for yourself? And actually in the book, The Happiness Project, I read about 3 different ways, which you'll be very familiar with. One is meditation, or mindfulness. The other one is medication. And the last one is therapy, or talk therapy, or whatever you would like to call it. So in my case, I was like, well, I've done the talk therapy thing before. I'm good. Actually, a little side note on that. The talk therapy thing for me is very interesting. I think it's extremely helpful for people, so do not take this as in any way, like I'm not recommending that you do it or you do not do it, but I just found it interesting to realize that it's very relevant for our culture. Here in the West, we've decided that it's a good idea to go down and sit down with one person in a small room and talk about your problems for hours on end. And this is not the way that other cultures necessarily look at this. Other cultures deal with this kind of therapy by bringing people together, bringing the community together, talking it out, bringing in music, bringing in dynamic things. So I thought that was very interesting. Medication, that was off the table for me as well. That's just a personal belief. And so I got very excited about meditation. Now, I had, as I said, been exposed to the practice of meditation, so I understood that it was like, yes, here we go. I had understood that meditation is not necessarily something, again, that is completely straightforward. It's extremely simple. It's one of those things. It's like I forget the exact quote by Einstein, but it's like, the theories that are the most simple are the most beautiful, but they can only be as simple as they can be. They can't be more simple than that. So that's the way I feel about mindfulness. And yes, I mean, I'm putting this back up here. Really, seriously, Jon Kabat-Zinn has crystallized, I think, the definition of mindfulness in a way that's very helpful. So I'm going to go through it one more time because I really think it's that important. Mindfulness is paying attention on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally to the unfolding experience, moment to moment. So if you think about that, paying attention, it's increasing your awareness of what's going on around you. On purpose, so this means you have set an intention of some sort for yourself. In the present moment, so that means your mind is not floating to what has happened in the past, what's going to happen in the future. Of course, your thoughts will be going those ways, but you're bringing yourself back to this present moment. Non-judgmentally, huge, right? Because we're constantly judging ourselves. And those judgmental thoughts are extremely distracting because not only do they bring up more thoughts, but they bring up emotions that then create thoughts, and so on and so forth. Non-judgmentally, that was an extremely huge barrier for me to get around it and just start to drop that voice inside of my head that was telling me things about myself or about the world around me. To the unfolding experience, moment to moment. Okay. The other thing that happened was that actually there's been a lot of science. So one of the reasons that mindfulness and meditation has become much more popular and much more accepted, I believe, is that it's been happening against the rise of science that backs what goes on in the brain and in the body when you meditate. So when my When I think about the meditation practices that I was exposed to 20 years ago, we were really only at the cusp of understanding in a scientific fact-based matter what was going on. And I really thanks so much the research that had happened. There's a whole bunch of universities involved. Most recently, there's been some really, really great research released by Harvard, but I mean, Stanford has some excellent resources as well, University of Wisconsin, University of Toronto, et cetera, et cetera. One thing I want to mention about University of Stanford, though, because they've been really inspirational to me, is they have these great laboratories. They have laboratories of calm, right, where they're trying to understand, like, how can we help people get to calm? How can we help people manage their technology so that they can understand that they don't need to be driven by the notifications that are coming up on their phone. They can actually set those things. So a couple of things in terms of the science. Mindfulness meditation changes your brain. It changes your brain in 8 weeks, which is phenomenal. So 8 weeks means that you take on a daily practice. The science recommends 12.5 minutes per day. We can talk more about the time a little bit later, but just wanted to mention, this is what the science is based on. So what happens when you do this for 8 weeks? Areas related to emotional regulation, areas in your brain related to emotional regulation, positive emotion, and self-control increase in volume. Cortical thickness increases in areas related to awareness, focus, attention, decision-making. All of these extremely critical skills, of course. 2 other ones that are really my favorites are that gray matter regenerates, and I think this is huge because a lot of people talk about how this is just something that happens with the aging process, and this kind of shows that that's not the case. And the amygdala shrinks. Woohoo! I was like, great, okay, this thing that's like dictating when I should be afraid is going to maybe take a little bit more of a back seat in my life and let other areas of my brain tell me what to do. All right, so meditation, bliss, right? I really want to just emphasize that it's more like running a marathon. Couple of parallels there that I think are really fun. Firstly, you would never think about starting a marathon right off the bat, right? We're not going to go out here and like run 26.2 miles unless we've been training for it, we've been preparing for it, we've been building up towards it. That's a really key concept. Another concept that I think is really interesting is that when you're training, so when you think about a marathon, when you're training for a marathon, you may start with 1 mile. You may start with 3 miles. You'll kind of judge where you start. Some people start walking, right? So you start where you're at. That's extremely important, especially for meditation. And then the next thing is that you'll see your progress. You'll start to reap the benefits, and you'll be able to increase your distance slowly but surely at your pace with what makes sense to you. It's not a competition against other people. You may be aware of other people and their speeds and everything, but it's about you. So the key to starting a meditation or mindfulness practice is to start. Sounds simple, but it's really real, and this is actually like it's a theory as well, that all you need to do is give yourself the objective to start for 5 seconds, and probably once you're in it for 5 seconds, you'll go and do the minute-long meditation, perhaps. The other thing to know about starting meditation practice is that you will find a million excuses not to do it. I don't have time, I'm tired, I don't want to, I'm not doing it right, I don't really get this, what is it anyways? Like every single excuse, your mind will get really smart too. It'll start coming up like these brilliant ideas around like how you don't necessarily need to meditate. And anyways, it's really special actually, kind of like watch it with some distance. Watch what your mind says with some distance. And treat it like a child, right? If a child is telling their parents, I don't want to eat my vegetables, well, we don't say, okay, sure, don't eat your vegetables for your whole life. You figure out a way to make it fun. You do a little airplane move, you do something, right? So treat that part of you that's saying, no, I'm not meditating, like a child, gently, softly, firmly. Also, you need to know that meditation is a new habit, and it's more akin to like brushing your teeth every day than anything else. Sometimes I get the question, when can I stop, right? So like after 8 weeks, am I done? No, it's like brushing your teeth. It's a hygiene practice. It's a physical practice, but for your mind and for your emotions. Try to keep on moving. So a couple of tips that I've also found. This is to get into a little bit more of the science of habit. Once you kind of set the intention that you want to meditate, it's very helpful for you to set a trigger that will get yourself to start meditating, and then understanding what's the simplest thing you can do to complete that meditation practice. So I'll be very specific. Okay, I want to do a meditation practice. I know that that's my intention. The external trigger will be that I will decide that every time I wake up in the morning, I'm going to meditate. The action is that I know I'm going to meditate for a specific amount of time, say 3 minutes to start. Next, to kind of create that hook and create that feedback loop over time, you want to make sure that you notice the rewards. So you notice yourself after 3 minutes and where your mind space is at. And then lastly, what is the little bit of work done to increase the likelihood of returning? That could be something like maybe you partner with a friend and say, I'm going to tell you when I finish my meditation practice. Now I want to turn to the technology piece. It's funny talking about technology when we're talking about mindfulness, because a lot of the times technology is the bad person in the room and in the conversation, right? Technology is the cause of all of our stress and our frustrations and our rapid way of life. But technology has some benefits. One of them is that you can now have on your phone an app that will take you through meditation. And there are a million apps out here. I put up a few. Headspace is extremely popular. Calm is another one that's extremely popular. And you can find basically a meditation that fits you in terms of time, in terms of whether it's guided or not, whether there's music involved, et cetera, et cetera. But for me, I have to admit, my little voice came up and said, wait, is that enough? Am I doing it right? Do I know what's happening? So I started looking at the fact that you really can measure whether you're in a state of calm or not. So this is just an example of some of the different ways that you know whether you're calm or not. And there's some fantastic wearable devices that will help track this for you while you're doing your meditation practice. So a couple of them that I wanted to point out is the Inner Balance app by the HeartMath Institute. And that's a monitor that you clip on your ear, and it measures your heart rate. And it'll guide you through a meditation that has as a goal to bring down, so that you can see your heart rate pattern and you can reduce it with time, with practice. You're training yourself, right? It's a training. So they'll gradually kind of bring you through that process. The other one here is the Spire, which measures your breathing patterns. And again, actually this one is yet to be released, so I'm not sure what the app is going to look like, but the idea is that you could consciously monitor your breathing patterns and kind of get a snapshot before and after of what's the rate. My favorite though, coming back to the brain and the mind, I have a fascination with this, is the brainwaves. Your brainwaves can also tell you whether you're calm or not. Our brains are emitting brainwaves, there are 5 of them. I would say 2 of them specifically really help you to know whether you're in a meditative state or not. And there are these, and this technology has actually been in labs for quite a long time, but it's only been available in a consumer format for about 4 months. So this is a headband. It's the Muse headband. You wear it. It has 4 sensors. It measures your brainwaves. You set the app so that while you're doing a meditation practice, you get a biofeedback signal as to whether your brainwaves are in calm mode or in stress mode. You hear the sound of wind when you're in stress and waves when you're in calm. And then at the end, you also get a graph. So I'll just quickly go through a couple of graphs. This is one of a meditation that I did, 7-minute long. And you can see how it started out in neutral and kind of went down to calm. Here's another one that's a lot of fun. I call this book ending, where you, so I did a meditation. I found myself to be quite stressed. I was in the active zone. I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? I went for a run. I came back, I did another meditation session. I found that I was in the neutral to calm zone. I just want to leave you with one last quote, and then that's it. People have been transforming their minds for thousands of years. Every major world religion includes some form of contemplative exercise, though today meditation is often practiced apart from any belief system. Meditation is pragmatic, the psychological and emotional equivalent of physical exercise. And this quote is by Sharon Salzberg, who's a fantastic meditation coach in New York. That's it. Thank you so much.